I'll just give people a minute. Yeah.
We'd love if people could introduce themselves in the chat as well, because that's something that you know, to show where you're from, what garden you're in, what allotment you're in, that type of thing. A good way to get people to know each other.
Yeah.
Are most people in now, Miriam?
Yeah, everybody's in, yeah.
Right. How many have we got?
58 so far.
Brilliant. Well, it's a Saturday morning and we know people have plenty to do in the garden, but it's snowy in a lot of places. So it's great to see you all here, and people will join as the morning progresses. We're going to mute people, and I'm just going to officially launch our benchmark standard for community growing and allotment provision in Northern Ireland. It is very pleasing to launch this report. I have it in my hand, and you are the lucky people that we are launching it first with. It has been 2 years in the making. It's a piece of research that we'd been wanting to do for a long time. And Miriam Turley, who'll talk about it in more detail later in the programme, headed it up. We decided to co-design a benchmark standard for provision of community gardens and allotments. And that's the space that councils have to set aside for growing. So it was an ambitious piece of work. We went round all the 11 councils in Northern Ireland. We interviewed them. We ran expert workshops with them. We ran policy information network meetings and used all the expertise that there is in Ireland and the UK. And we've come up with this report. We hope that the report will get a fair wind when it lands with each council, because we have done this preparatory work with the local council officers. And of course, it's very timely with what is happening in Ireland with the development plan, which is actually leaving out our community growing spaces in Ireland. And that is worrying, that we have to be vigilant and increase our voice to ensure that this sector thrives as we know it should, rather than it can be forgotten about with a stroke of a pen. And you'll hear more about that, as it is our theme today, access to land, as all our projects, no matter what they are, need land. So we're going to have a very interesting morning, but you are the first to see this fantastic piece of work, and we're so pleased to be launching it today. So I want you to just clap virtually for Miriam, who did the research for this, and the whole team. Thank you. I'll hand over to you, Dónal.
Thanks, Patricia, and well done last night. It's a great bit of work, so no, well done. So hi everyone. Anyone doesn't know me, my name is Dónal McCormack, and I'm the chairperson of Community Gardens Ireland. And I suppose first off, just want to say thanks for attending. Today, it's an all island community growers spring event and annual forum. And as a bit of housekeeping, you'll probably have seen we're recording this event. We're also going to take a couple of photos as we go along, just so people involved, because there's quite a large number here. So if you don't want your photo taken, turn off your camera, but you're duly warned. If anyone doesn't know what Community Gardens Ireland are, so we're a volunteer group. We're made up of people from all over the island of Ireland, and our goal is to support and to promote community gardening in Ireland. So we're delighted with the interest that has been shown to date. So there was, I think, we were at 149 people had signed up to this event. So hopefully we'll get some people dropping in later on, but there's been a lot of interest in this event. So we're really, really happy with that. The reason we're kind of here today is we there was a program that Community Gardens Ireland and Social Farms Gardens Northern Ireland worked together called GRA Ireland, or Growing Resilience Across Ireland. And this project brought community growers together north and south. And it was really important because there's been loads of studies showing that there are numerous groups on the island of Ireland who don't have any connection or relationship with each other. So part of what we did was bringing people north from the south and south to go up north and to get them to know each other and to kind of develop those relationships together. And that's very, very important. As Patricia was saying, there are challenges that we're seeing when it comes to allotments and community gardens in Ireland. And recently, what we've been able to do in terms of our networking is rely on our friends in social farms and gardens in Northern Ireland for our help to help out with this. We'll talk through some of the challenges later on, but having that strong connection of allies and friends that are doing similar work is really, really important. And as part of this event, we've kind of put that sharing and community friendship like very, very key to this event. You'll be broken into groups later on. You get the opportunity to discuss with people that you might have never talked to or never have spoken to before, and you might have an opportunity to share some seeds. If you have loads of tomato seeds, if you have a rare type of potato that you want to share, who knows? Or if you're heading on your holidays later on in the year and you're going near a garden that you talk to, just give them a shout and drop into them, and I suppose keep that relationship going. Kind of what we want to do here is, if you excuse the growing pun, we want to kind of grow relationships naturally here. There's a busy day ahead, and I know Maeve is going to be very strict in the timekeeping, and that's good because it means that we're not going to waste anything, so fair play to you. So first off, we're going to be hearing from community gardens around Ireland. So the Strabane Community Garden, there's Taplin Fields in Dublin, there's the Glen Community Garden in Cork City, and the Friends of Merlin Woods Community Garden in Galway. We're going to talk a little bit about the access to land and the challenges with that. So Miriam's going to give an update from her side. I'm going to give an update on what's happening down here. We're going to have a bit of questions and answers. There's going to be a bit of breakout rooms as well for us to be able to talk and for you to meet other gardens and other people involved with community growing across the island. And then we have a really exciting case study from Santry Community Garden, who were the recipient of the Green Flag Award last year. So very excited to hear that. So yeah, we just encourage you to introduce yourself on the chat if you're just come in now. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting this day going. After this, we'll then be going on to a AGM for Community Gardens Ireland starting at 1 o'clock. That'll only last half an hour, but we encourage people to hang around just for that half an hour, just so we can kind of get through some of the business required for that. So again, thank you for everyone for facilitating today. As I'll show later on, I haven't been that involved with the organization of today, and there are numerous reasons behind that. But thank you to everyone at Social Farms and Gardens, so Patricia, Miriam, and Connor, and particularly on the Community Gardens Ireland side, the same Connor, Maeve and Ellie for helping to organise this. In terms of the rest of the committee, I'll just name them very, very quickly. There's Maeve Foreman, who's involved with Mud Island Community Garden. There's Claire Lyons, Cherry Orchard Community Garden. Myself, I'm involved with Blessington Allotments in Wicklow. There's Conor O'Kane. But obviously, Conor is Social Farms and Gardens in Northern Ireland, involved with a variety of gardens there. Orla Sally is in County Tyrone and Oma there, and she's a local community gardener there. There's Miriam Samper with the Blarney Park Community Garden, Justina Traore with Top of the City Community Garden, and Ellie Donovan, who I'll pass over to now in Lurch Cork Community Garden. So listen, thank you all for coming. Looking forward to the day. So Ellie, over to you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Very welcome. So we are delighted to have 4 representatives from the 4 provinces today. We have Ship Community Garden in Strabane. We then have Taplin's Field in Dublin, the Glen Community Garden in Cork, and then we will have Friends of Merlin Woods, excuse me, in Galway. So first of all, could we welcome Ship Community Garden in Strabane, please? And thanks a million for coming.
I don't think it's recognizing me.
That's okay.
Purple slides, please. First of all, I'd like to thank the organisers for asking us to give a presentation here today. It might seem long, but I'll talk through the slides right and quick. We have a 2-acre site based in Strabane town. As you can see from slide 1, it was a field we got from council. We got at least for 25 years. It's just under 2 acres. And we started back in 2004. Next slide, please. Next slide. The development of the thing, it was started off with a number of families wanting their for us to work with their single men or people who are suffering from mental health problems or alcohol dependency. And we held a number of community meetings. And we started off with a pilot program. And the pilot program was a very small community-based program. And we started off with a 20-foot polytunnel. Next slide, please. And the 20-foot polytunnel was just to sort out were the local interests within the community. And it was very clear from the first initial engagement that there was a lot of groups and individuals would like to get involved. Next slide. And the small polytunnel was dealing with men, as I say, living on their own. The program also allowed for us to engage with a consultation exercise with within the community sector and with local statute agencies reference funding for these types of programs. But it was very clear from day one that the community wanted a larger program. Next slide, please. We done a bit of publicity around it, and it started to generate a lot of talk within council. We then went to council and asked them formally would they grant us a piece of land. Next slide. And you can see the piece of land that we got was really a very bad, disused site. And there were regular antisocial activity in it, bonfires and weekend drinking sessions. We started by clearing the rubbish off the site. Next slide. And the first thing we done is we checked the water level. Now we're located near a river, so we have drainage problems. So we contacted the public health agency to see would they help us in here. They awarded us 8,700 to put forward drainage, and we put forward our own funding of towards the project to raise, to put down fencing and they undertake groundwork. Next slide. During the consultation, one of the things that we established was the need for raised allotment beds for people with disability who suffer mobility problems. And it was clear that this was a major point that we had to do. So we put in 12 concrete ones, and we have another 24 raised beds within the site. Because the site sits on the edge of a big housing estate, there was concern around antisocial behaviour. And you can see from the last slide, we dropped in steel containers, offices, so they were easily maintained. But I have to say, in all the years we're here, we've never had any antisocial activity on the site or never had any damage from the community. So because it was community led and community initiative, I think the local community and young people especially bought into it. Next slide. We were very lucky in 2010 when the Chief Executive, Dr. Eddie Rooney from Public Health Agency, opened the site for us. And that gave a very good stamp of approval for us to actually go to other agencies. Next slide. So we actually done it in a two-stage approach. And stage two was recruiting local families and individuals to actually take on the allotments. This stage has seen large groups from the statutory organisation also engaging with the project. The local mental health support organisations, Hillside Health Group, Grow Your Own projects, local primary schools and local community organisations. And this was very beneficial at the time because it really let the community knew that the project was there and it was getting very well attended. Plus we had local families and individuals of 20. Next slide. We also done a couple of learning events with the local community groups, teaching them what we were about, what we were trying to do, and the long-term objective of the project. And one of the things about it is our project keeps evolving. Every year it evolves, and this was just a part of the process in 2012. And by doing that publicity and getting the local papers involved, it kept it live within the community. Next slide. We also done a local growing events in the sense that we took our local produce to the local markets in Strabane town. And this was really beneficial because it allowed us to assess the interest on growing a social economy program through marketing our produce to local markets and stuff like this. Now, this has actually moved on dramatically over the last 18 months, but I'll speak to that at the very end. Next slide. One of the things we're keen to the project, we actually have a lot of groups visiting the site. And one of the things that we do is we actually do a lot of transfer of knowledge. And by visiting our site, we actually can take people through the journey we've been on and the successful conclusion of how we got funding and how we work with councils and how we work with other statutory agencies to bring in funding to the site and develop programs. And you can see there we had projects from Donegal, Monaghan, Armagh, Antrim, Fermanagh, Derry City, and Belfast. Groups attending the site over the last number of years. Next slide. We also knew the whole project around the men's health. Men's health, everyone's health, men's health, particularly within the Strabane area, is pretty bad. So we held a number of men's focus groups, and other focus groups allowed us to develop specific programs identifying the need of men within the area. And we hosted a number of seminars to make sure that people understood again what we were trying to do, how we were trying to engage, and what our long-term assessment was. Next slide. Out of this, we could see the project slowly developing, and as a response to our programs, we done classes. These programs were either individually based or community based wide. There were woodwork classes, health awareness classes, cooking classes, food box programs, environmental health programs, and employment programs, as well as social engagement programs for members of the local community. Next slide. We then started, we're very lucky in 2017 to get a large grant from the National Lottery, and that carried us from 2017 to 2022. And this was more about community engagement. It allowed us to have 2 members of staff in place for the project, one a manager and the other an administration person for 20 hours a week. And that allowed us then to really go at our project. And over the last while, we have constantly developed the aims of the project, that we want to make sure that it's community-led, community-based. And one of the things we did with the National Lottery is ask them to assist us in developing action plans, which they kindly did. Next slide. One of the action plans led to the building of to the construction of a new building. The building is one of these eco buildings, and it's worth just under 300,000. Within the building, we have counselling rooms, health rooms, activity spaces, spaces for the staff, and also cooking facilities. The building will also allow the project to expand its services within the community. And this really was we got it in July 2019, and we all know what happened by March 2020 was COVID, and that centre remained open throughout the whole pandemic and was a centre of activity. Because we had counselling facilities and because we had trained staff in place, we were able to respond to the needs of the community during the pandemic. Next slide.
Jarlath, that's your 1 minute warning.
Right then, thank you.
No worries.
And one of the things we've done then is we used activities through the pandemic to grow again. So we can see from the photographs we are expanding again. We have running groups, we have site work groups, we have women's health groups, and we're constantly expanding. Instead of going on to the next slide, what I would say now, that if we're in a 1 minute countdown, that we're now opening later this year with the support of council a new food box programme. They have given us over £30,000 towards it, Derry and Strabane District Council, and that will be launched in spring of this year. It will allow us to grow local produce and sell it to the local community. It's all funded under the programme for council, supporting the local activity of the community. One of the things that we're really good at is obtaining funding. We have another 5-year funding from the National Lottery, and that's for new staff again. So again, we're expanding into more staff members. And one of the things that we're looking forward to is going to a social economy programme in 2024, which will give us sustainability for the next 10 to 15 years. As you can see through the slides here, we do a lot of activities out in the community. And one of the things we've done during the pandemic is we actually done a lot of engagement with the community who couldn't leave their houses. We sent out kits to them, home kits, so they were able to do activities at their houses and do activities within their own family circles. So if anybody ever wants to visit the site or come and see us or have a conversation with us, we're more than welcome to do it. Any questions?
I'm not sure if I think we'll take questions later
Right,
during
that'll do.
the but thanks so much, Charlotte. That was Charlotte McNulty, and that was a fabulous presentation. And then hopefully we'll get to visit you on our next Grow trip up north. But great work being done. And next, could we invite Kieran from Taplin's Field to present for us, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll just get my thing up here. How do I move this? There we go. Okay, cool. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for inviting us to this. We're a relatively new garden, so we don't have the kind of experience that some of the other gardens do here, especially that last project. Wow, it's amazing. The amount of things you can get through with a few willing people is really inspiring. But anyway, we're Taplin's Fields in Bridgefoot Street Park. We're in a DCC owned park with a community garden separate. And the thing that's kind of different about ours, I suppose, is that it's open 24/7 to the public. So anyone at any time can walk through, which is kind of a bit of a social experiment, I'd say. I think that's how I'd describe it. It's been interesting so far, but we've had some successes, some challenges. But anyway, I'll get to that in the next bit. First of all, just a bit of the background of it. It was originally an empty site, designated for housing at some points, and it was informally gardened by locals from across the road in the Oliver Bond flats, and there's other flats around as well, which they used the garden for kind of their own community garden, I suppose. Informally, it wasn't ever DCC thing, and it was mainly championed, I suppose, by Richie Taplin here, who's in the photo there. Yeah, he sadly passed away in 2019, just before the garden and the park itself was actually fully made reality. But there was a lot of community involvement, and a lot of people who knew him wanted to keep this spirit of sort of community involvement going in this little space. And yeah, as I said, it's open 24/7. There's no barriers, there's fences, but the entrances to the park are all open, and there's no real border between where our community garden starts and where the rest of the park starts. So it's quite interesting. The big thing was that the Liberties area has the lowest percentage of green space in Dublin, so a park was really kind of needed in this area. It's very built up around with all the Guinness Quarter sort of area as well, and there's a lot of industry and stuff around. So the green space is really welcome in the area. It really adds something. Yeah, and then unlike Weaver Park, which was built a couple of years before, they have a sort of closed off community garden as part of their park itself. So ours is a bit different, but it's been working so far anyway. Our main goals really for the park were first of all to get ourselves into it, which proved to be a challenge as we kind of started mid-COVID, which was a bit awkward. So the construction of everything was happening. We were half allowed in and out, and I have a few pictures showing what we were kind of dealing with throughout the whole thing. And then the second goal, really, when we got a bit more established, which is kind of this year, I suppose. We've only been open a year, so our goals for this year and next and the future years are kind of similar enough to the Strabane in the past. Example was to become a place where education happens. There's opportunities for people to try new things. Community is obviously a big part of this whole thing as well. Yeah, so that's kind of our main sort of ideas behind the whole thing, was to just get people involved, get different social groups involved. There's a lot of different networks and groups already interested, but they didn't really have a space that they could kind of go to and have classes and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is kind of the timeline of our garden. There was a few years before this where it was a lot of sort of community involvement, community engagement, plans being drawn up and scrapped and redone and all this sort of thing. That went on for a while. Then there was the whole construction, which was mid-COVID, which was very awkward in terms of us trying to figure out what the garden even looked like, what the finished product was going to be, which was interesting. So we were trying to kind of figure that out through the barriers and through the hoarding. So eventually, May 2022, we had the opening day. I think we had been in there a few weeks ourselves prior to formal opening. So we had sort of started, and that was a great day for everybody involved, I think. And then we've
Just
kind
a
of
minute
now,
or so left, Kieran. Yeah.
oh yeah, sure, no bother. Grand. One year on. So here's just a few pictures to kind of describe. So we've, during construction, this is what we were kind of left doing, was coming up with plans on our yeah, kind of away from the park itself, trying to decide what we wanted in each area. Here was us finally visiting the garden. Then we got it opened. The Lord Mayor at the time came down. We have some familiar faces here who came down to visit on opening day. And then 2022, we got a few things done. We got compost beds put in. So 1 compost bed turned into 3, and we're going to upgrade that even more again this year. We did some workshops. We managed to get some straggly looking carrots out of the ground eventually. We did have some success with cabbages, and there was flax and stuff as well, which was very, very successful. We've kind of formalized the group structure a bit better. We've laid out the garden a bit better this year, and it's going to be our first full year in the garden. Obviously, as I said, there's antisocial behavior challenges and things like that, and growing membership. But I think these are kind of things that, as we're more established, they become more, yeah, we'll kind of work around them a bit better, I think, in the coming years. But yeah, as I said, we're a pretty new garden. We're at Taplin's Fields on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, if you want to connect with us, or if you're around the area, come visit. That's me done.
Fantastic, Kieran, and best of luck with all your challenges. But I think you're right in saying that, you know, it just takes a while for people to get familiar with you, and that it sounds like you're
exactly.
doing very well done. Thanks, Kieran. And next, could we please invite Barry Hickey from the Glen Community Garden in Cork? Thank you.
I forgot I need to unmute myself. So hi guys, I'm Barry. I'm from the garden in the Glen in the north side of Cork City. So we'll just move on to the next slide now straight away, and I'll go a bit into it. So well done on the last 2 guys as well. I really enjoyed the presentations. So we'll just look at where we're located. So we're located on the grounds of the Glen Resource Centre in the north side of Cork City. The resource centre where the garden is located is it's a public space owned by Cork City Council and managed by the resource centre. It's open as well as the garden being open from 7 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. in the evening, Monday to Fridays, and weekends it's open from 9 to 6, so it's pretty accessible. The garden as well as adjacent a 54-hectare glacial park, the Glen River Park, which is an absolute biodiversity hotspot in Cork. It's a beautiful park. If you ever get to Cork, it's well worth a visit. It's a wetland park. The Glen is also a residential area in the north side of the city. It's mostly made up of social housing. There's about 2,500 people living there. So we'll move on to the next one. So like I was saying, there's just a few pictures here of the land that we've used for the garden. So we've taken pretty much any vacant space around the sports campus of the Glen. So the green areas on the map here now are just little parts of the park that was disused land that we've converted into garden beds. So pretty much any corner, any edge, any little spot on the campus, we've came in and try to re-beautify it and grow some food and some flowers and increase biodiversity wherever we could. So we'll move on now to the next one as well. The Glen Garden was established back in 2009 by the community with the help of Bernard Toomey, who's the community health worker for the HSE. Has a program that tackles health inequalities in specific areas and communities within the city and the county. So the groundwork these guys done, both metaphorical and actual literal, paved the way for the work that was done down the line in the garden to get it to where it is today. So we'll move on now, please. The garden was originally set up to produce food. So the Glen, it would have been considered a food desert. There's not even a shop in the local area, even though there's 2,500 people. So the community came together to create a place where they could have access to fresh organic food on their doorstep in the local community. So we've done little events like during the harvest season, we make free food stalls, or have a free food stall at the entrance to the resource centre. There's 2 creches in the resource centre at the moment, and there's a lot of other community groups that use the space, like schools use the space for their PE. There's used every evening. Sports teams come to use it. There's recovery groups and just loads of different groups that use the resource centre. So it was nice to have access to food and stuff here. So the garden has grown over the past 14 years. So at the moment, we've 3 years ago, there was funding secured to have a community gardener / coordinator for the garden. So before that, it was just managed mostly by, or just pretty much all by volunteers. So in the last few years, the last 3 years, since the community gardeners came on, we've divided the garden up and expanded it into 13 different growing spaces. So the idea is that the garden will now be able to use a lot of different types of gardens within the garden. So because we get a lot of visitors from other community gardens, people that are setting up, and we support a lot of different growing projects by having a variety of different style gardens. So we can show people different types of gardens that might fit their context, all in like disused spaces that we've been doing this on. So we've like a polytunnel. We also have an outdoor wellness and health space and meditation space. There's different types of raised bed gardens. There's a permaculture food forest, a fruit area. We've an ornamental flower garden. We've like seeding areas, herb gardens. We've a sensory garden. There's also a massive compost area as well. And we've put in a nursery over the last 2 years as well to support other gardening projects across the north side with access to plants and seeds and stuff like that. So we'll move on. So we just have a few pictures of the garden over the last 2 years. So if we move on again.
And just a minute left there, sorry.
Yeah, no bother. So we'll move on again. So we have an open door policy in the garden. We run 2 weekly garden groups, Wednesday and Thursdays, but we also facilitate different workshops and access for different community groups within the community to come in and use the space. So we also get access to CE workers and stuff like that in the garden. So you can move on, yeah. So this is just a lot of the work that we do as well. We are connected to the Metal Florina initiative from the Health Action Zone, which has around 16 projects across the north side. And part of this is we have a tool sharing program, which we share tools to the different community gardens across the north side. We also have access to electric van, which helps with the different projects across the north side as well. So we'll just move on again. So this is part of what we do as well. We noticed that most gardens in Cork don't have access to high quality compost. So no dig seems to be kind of a big buzzword in community gardening at the moment. So it's very hard to do something like that when you don't have access to high quality compost. So we're currently working on creating a community compost system in the Glen and St. Luke's. So at the moment, we take around 150 kilos of spent coffee per week from 3 coffee shops in Cork, which is would otherwise have ended up in the landfill. So over the space of a year, this would have released the same amount of greenhouse gas as 14 cars driving it yearly. So that's just from 3 coffee shops. And that's the same thing for food waste. If food waste goes to the landfill, 1 ton of food waste equates to about 1 ton of carbon dioxide as well. So that's a lot. And just the last thing then this year as well, in 2022, we were delighted to accept the Pride of Place Community Award for the community garden on behalf of the community. So that's it now. So thanks very much. I hope I didn't run over too much.
That's fantastic, Barry. Thanks a million. And congratulations on your Pride of Place award. It's very well deserved. Great
Thanks,
work.
Ellie.
And last but not least, could we please have Caroline Stanley from Friends of Merlin Woods to give us the last presentation from Connaught. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep, can hear you. Yep, Carolyn.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, my connection's a bit dodgy, so hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, my name is Caroline Stanley and I'm from Merlin Woods Community Garden, but I also started with Friends of Merlin Woods around the same time. So there's very much a tie in there with biodiversity in the garden. The garden started first with a group called the Art Garden Group, and that's basically the name. Officially we are as Art Gardening Group, but we work in the Merlin Woods Community Garden. You can move to the next slide, please. So when we began in 2012, we were looking for a space to use. At the time, we found there was a community house with a small back garden, so it enabled us to set up growing, learning about how to plant and all that kind of stuff, and then to bring people into the space to garden with us, in the view of building up a group that would eventually start a community garden. We also worked with the Merlin Health Training Centre, and this training centre was a place that worked with mental health patients. So we were allocated a small space there to work with while we were still looking for our own space. So at the time as well, we were looking for, I actually started and I joined an allotment group within the city to push the council to set up allotments. So while we were setting up the community garden, we were also working with council to find a space for allotments. So we found 2 areas within Merlin Woods perimeters, one for allotments, which was 30 allotments were set up there. That was run by the council, and then a rough space of ground for our own Merlin Woods community garden. And this space, took a long time to eventually get. I think it was 2014 we got into it. It took a year for the council to put up the perimeter fence, and it was just one perimeter fence along the edge of the pathway there. There was no other fence, so that took a long time. So sometimes working with councils, things are very, very slow, and it's very frustrating when things are so slow, but we eventually got in there. You can move to the next slide. When we moved into the garden, it was basically a very overgrown space. It was a place that was full of landfill material from the building sites around us, and then we were surrounded on the other side by Merlin woods. And what we wanted to concentrate on was actually just getting the areas we wanted for growing. So we started with like a herb bed and a 70-metre fruit tree area along the perimeter fence, and got a lot of people down through different workshops and stuff. So that was, and the raised beds then were made from recycled scaffold boards that we managed to get pretty cheaply at the time, and it was great. There was about 10 people in the group at that time working with us, and we worked with schools and whoever was interested to do planting days and stuff like that as well. Next slide, thanks. We use a lot of sustainable materials and recycling of older materials. So our compost area would be made out of pallets. We'd find some tyres down by the docks in Galway and use those. We also used a lot of hazel, so we were doing woodland copsing projects in Merlin Woods with friends of Merlin Woods. So using that hazel then when the copsing was done was a great way to create fences and stuff. And then we have the willow there. We have willow work. So with the garden as well, there was a lot of areas of kind of flooding that were happening. So we had to basically try to work out how to dry it out. So we used a willow fence on the other side, opposite the fence that the council put in. And this willow fence is great because it absorbs the water that maybe floods into the garden, and we drain water away from the garden to this fence as well. So it absorbs a lot of water, and that's helped a lot with the flooding. Of course, willow could be seen as invasive, in other areas. So we do advise people not to put it into their small back gardens in cities. And it's also a really good pollinator as well. So it's a good educational thing for people to understand the importance of willow, especially the living willow. And we have a few living willow stuff in the garden now at this stage. How to promote the garden. We did workshops inside and outside, learning new skills. Wood burning is a very good one, when we're working with recycling materials or sustainable materials. So, we would use wood burning for our signs. People could use if there was wood or designs they want to put in their garden and stuff. Willow workshops, making our fences, hazel workshops, wreath making, all sorts of stuff like that. Card making, using natural materials. So it's very much based around natural materials, our garden. You can move on there if you like. Community engagement, I said, was very important. So our container was a very old, red, rusty container, and we needed to make it waterproof, basically, and to reduce the rust in it. So in order to do that, we used some marine ply on the sides that weren't good enough to be filled with filler, basically. So we got the youth group down to do some painting work with us, and a local artist, Irene, to do some work. And now that whole container has been is basically painted up and rust proofed, and it looks fantastic now. And it's an inspiration to a lot of other places to do similar stuff with containers that might be falling apart. And to link in, a lot of people forget that networking is a great way to increase grants as well. By working with other groups, you can increase your grants. So we've worked a lot with the Art Women's Group on projects as well, for mosaic seats and stuff. So they may do part of the mosaic up in the resource centre where they're based, and then bring the mosaic panels down, and we place them then on the concrete seats that we would have kind of created for the mosaic seating. Next, please.
Just a minute to go, Carla.
Biodiversity is very important. Okay, biodiversity is very important in the garden. We have, as I said, Merlin Woods is around us, so we're very conscious of the need to look after biodiversity. I'm very careful of what we plant in our garden as well. So we do things like butterfly gardens. So we show people how to basically maybe use garden plants, but also to allow biodiversity to grow within those planted beds as well. And also we have a lot of orchids and stuff in our garden, so we kind of mow around those. The pathways are mowed in, and then the rest of it's left go wild. Next slide. We link in, at the moment we're linking in with the GRATP, with horticulture students, and they come down to our garden each week to do their work practice. And we have 12 students working with us in the garden at the moment, and that's fantastic. They learn about paving, they learn about, say, orchard growing. So you can see the third picture there is our orchard, which is also part of our children's area, so it allows kids to run through the tunnel. And those orchard poles there are from the woodland, so they're conifers that would have fallen in Merlin woods, and we've taken them out and used them in the garden in this way, so another sustainable use of material and free material. Next slide. So the garden is very much a social space. We have no gates either, so you can come into our garden 24 hours a day. It has led to some antisocial behaviour, but overall it's a great space for the local community to use at any time. We've lots of different seating areas, green seats. We run community garden events, and we also love the fact that other schools can use it. So our outdoor classroom can be used there, or different youth groups can come down, sit around, do work outside. Feroga groups, all sorts of groups can use it in our area. And Duishka is a very, very new area. We have 50-something nationalities, so it's a very diverse community. There's very little older people in the community, so it was really built up from scratch, the community. So bringing community together is very important in this space, and building community. Thank you very much. The next slide, last bit. And we're in a garden network called Let's Get Galway Growing in the city, and we have about 7 different community gardens. Some are open to the public, and some then are, say, by co-op or direct provision. So we all support each other in projects and try to meet each other. And it's very inspiring to visit other community gardens as well. And thank you. This is just a Friends of Merlin Woods event that shows how it can be used then as well, space for drama and art and stuff like that as well. So thank you.
Thanks a million, Caroline. That was fantastic, inspirational, and yeah, you're so lucky
Thank you.
to have a woods behind you. Thanks to all our 4 presenters. That was, well, for me anyway, very motivating and very inspiring. And yeah, I want to come and see you all very soon. I'll head you back to Dónal now for the next section. Thank you.
Ellie, thank you, and thanks to everyone for presenting that. That's amazing. I don't know if anyone else feels, but I feel inspired to get out in the garden immediately after this. So no, as I said in the chat there, I love how the spaces are just they're welcoming to so many other members of the community, and they're basically just these shared community spaces, and it's great to see that being evident. Miriam, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first, or how do you want to do this?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah.
Go for it.
I'll do. Let me see. Somebody can keep an eye on my time. Oh, I've forgotten how to make it full screen. Let me see. There we go. Yeah, so just to really quickly explain some of the background behind the report that Patricia launched this morning at the start of this event. Oh, could somebody else mute people while I'm talking? So this is work that's been going on for about 2 years now. And as Dónal said at the start, it was sort of a lot of the project that we did was about building relationships. So it was building relationships with council officers and people working in public bodies to try and understand what the barriers were to access to public land for community food growing. And that, I think that has worked really well. It's sort of that focus on relationship building means that some of the barriers have really come out and we've been able to address them. But the background of this work was the fact that there's no statutory obligation to provide community food growing space in Northern Ireland. There is in the rest of the UK except London, but just in Northern Ireland there isn't. So this seemed like something that was worth working on at a council level and trying to get councils to adopt a standard provision of space for community food growing. There's also the fact that our planning system is changing at the minute since 2015, since the review of public administration. The local development plans are being written at the minute, so it's an opportunity to try and look at that. And just as well, the fact that the UK government seems to be cutting statutory spending at the minute, and a lot of parks budgets have been slashed recently. So this is the background of the work that we did. So as Tricia said, we spoke to 11 officers in 11 councils and just understood what the provision currently was, and then just ways that it could be increased. So some of the findings of the reports were that, yeah, which councils were providing allotments, which were providing community gardens. Then the other support that councils were providing, like some councils were renting out space to communities to manage land. The rents that they were charging for allotments and the rents they were charging for community gardens. And what information they provided as well, if they had a web page or not, if they had policies, and if they had community asset transfer policies as well. And the overall finding was that there's a lot less provision than in the rest of the UK, and this might be because we don't have it in legislation. Like in Scotland, by law, they have to have a food growing officer and they have to have a food policy for their council, whereas we don't have anything like that. So, so that was a good thing to find out. And it was really useful to just talk to all the council officers and get all that information into one place. And the last time that anybody's done research like that is the Second World War. So it was really satisfying to get all that information in one place. So the recommendation that we made is basically that all the councils should aim to provide 1,250 square meters of community growing space per 1,000 households. And that they should do that in collaboration with other public bodies, because one of the things is that councils in Northern Ireland don't own a lot of land because housing and education is separate, which isn't the same as in the rest of the UK. So councils aren't massive landowners, so they should collaborate with other public bodies to try and provide more space for community growing. And this standard that we're proposing is a lot less than the standard that the rest of the UK is really working to, but it's a lot more than some of the councils already have. So we wanted to make it achievable, but still ambitious as well. So we sort of treading that fine line. Other recommendations, you can read the report. We will send it out to you if you want to read more detail, but just in summary, yeah, we thought that councils should also, as they already are, and a lot of the councils are already working, the officers there are working to sort of the best of their ability to provide a lot of really great support. But that they should continue to provide support and horticultural training. Somebody asked in the chat earlier, why does it take councils so long to sign over land? That time scale is a real challenge. So we recommended that they should adopt a proportionate community asset transfer. So it should be an easy community asset transfer for signing over bits of land, and that there should be timescales agreed in that transfer policy. There should be targets for waiting lists, that there should be transparent and centralised waiting list systems, because some of the councils don't have that. That there should be a clear point of contact for communities wanting to grow. So there should basically be a website saying if you want to grow in your land, in your community, and you'd like to access some land for that, that this is who to contact, because that doesn't exist. That councils should have a food growing strategy for each of their areas to achieve these targets. That they should look at mapping facilities, especially to make sure that community growing is accessible to communities with the greatest disadvantage. So just to try and make sure that those social justice values are embedded in all this work. And really importantly, that they should be working with other public landowners to make sure that this is all joined up and developing those relationships. And so there are structures for this communication to happen, like community planning, like neighbourhood renewal, and like sustainable food place partnerships. So just figuring out which of those is the most appropriate in each council area. And finally, that yeah, just looking into this opportunity in local development plans. And the next steps are, so this is where we will like your help. So we want to get commitment from each council to adopt some of these recommendations. They might not adopt all of them, but just some. So we'll be in touch, that maybe you would sort of support us, maybe contact your local council or your local councillors and ask them to look at this report and to look at which of the recommendations they could adopt. Also, just to flag the fact that the UK SPF fund will be coming out soon, will be launched soon. And it's about councils working with communities to deliver infrastructure improvements, which include community growing spaces. So that's an opportunity to look out for. And if you'd like to read the report, I think we'll just be sending it out to everybody, so you can read it then. So thank you. Dónal?
That's brilliant,
Do you want to
Miriam.
go next? Okay.
No, yeah, sure. That's I was posting in the chat. I love the idea of a standard for local authorities, that they must have a certain amount provided per number of people. I think that's achievable, that's tangible, and that's recordable. And it's brilliant. So no, well done. That's something that we haven't looked at in our report so far, but I think we'll definitely be looking to forward it on to the relevant people here. So no, well done, absolutely amazing work. Okay, I'm gonna even though I'm an engineer, I've decided not to go for a PowerPoint presentation for my thing, which is kind of a strange thing. So I'm just going to talk for the next while. I'm also going to put in the chat a link to an news article that we put on the Community Gardens Ireland website that kind of gives information for what our submission was. I'll give some background as well to where this came from. I hope it won't go over time, but I'm just going to start now. So one of the things that I've been involved with since I joined Community Gardens Ireland back in 2021, it's been a quick 2 years. My focus really has been on policies, access to land, and trying to improve that really throughout Ireland. And to get more allotments of community gardens set up as a result of these policy changes or land changes. So the reason being is that there's 3 main aspects that are required to sustain community growing, and one is funding, and one is education.
Dónal, sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask a quick question, because I have to go away a bit early?
Go ahead.
It's you, Germany. See the chat messages. I know you have recorded the main thing, but does the chat messages record? Do you know all the links? No,
we'll be recording them as well. Yeah,
we'll send it out, Patrick.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay.
So land is the third aspect that is very important to sustain community growing as well. So basically throughout 2021 and 2022, we ended up making a large number of submissions. And we made about 10 or 15 in 2021, about 20 to government bodies in 2022. And we're not going to go through each of them because we'll be here for hours, but we'll talk to a little bit at the AGM, just to highlight some of the things we were involved with. But one of the primary things that we did was that we made a presentation to an Oireachtas committee on housing, local government and heritage on the 1st of March, 2022. So myself and Maeve ended up going there. And at that Oireachtas committee, we presented our Let's Get Growing report, and that's the report I sent a link to in the chat. And it gives a summary of allotments and community gardens in Ireland for the last 100 years. It highlights the gaps and weaknesses that are there in the law. It mentions how local authorities keep referring to laws that have been repealed since 1994. It also compares Ireland versus other European countries, and put forward recommendations to help change the system, to help encourage more allotments and community gardens. And also related to making this presentation at the Oireachtas committee, which got full party support, which is great, was we ended up building relationships with TDs and senators and policymakers as well. And that's kind of the other thing. Again, we mentioned that is building relationships is key, and that could be locally and that could be at a government level. Really, really key to making any change. So following the Oireachtas committee, the findings from them were forwarded to the relevant minister. And then initially, we haven't publicised this, but we were told that no changes were required. But obviously, we didn't take that. We wrote letters back, and we ended up getting a meeting with the relevant government ministers, and then ended up getting an agreement for a new policy to support allotments and community gardens in Ireland. So the first time there will be a national policy. We got agreement from the 2 government ministers, which is good. We did push for legislation at that meeting, but we got a national policy. So that is something positive. So then fast forward to February of 2023, we ended up seeing that there was a gap in the Planning and Development Bill. So what's happening was the old Planning and Development Act from 2000 was being replaced by a new bill. So completely tearing it up, putting in place a new one. And as part of that, they were proposing to remove the definition of an allotment, and community gardens were never mentioned in law. They were going to remove the role of local authority to reserve land for communities to grow fruit and vegetables, and also remove the role of local authorities to promote, facilitate or control the provision of land. So potentially all 2,500 allotments of community gardens, if that was to have been approved, would be at severe risk because there'd be nothing in law then. We immediately got into contact with all members of the Oireachtas committee that we built that relationship with, and also Minister Noonan. And within a week, we were told from the Department of Housing and from members of the Oireachtas committee that this was an omission and that this will be rectified in the final draft of the bill. So we jumped on it, which explains, as I said, why I haven't been as involved with the setting up of this meeting. So my apologies, and thank you for everyone for taking the slack. But my focus has been trying to work on this in the meantime. And it's good that we got that word, that feedback that it'll be rectified, but we don't know what that will be. We don't know what that final wording will be. And as mentioned, community gardens are not mentioned in law. So one of the main things that we kind of got from this, we got a good bit of publicity with an article in the Irish Examiner a couple of weeks ago. And then if anyone saw RTE News last Sunday, there was some really good feedback and discussion from community gardens and allotments in Cork. And I happen to be honest as well, talking through how, yes, we don't know what that final wording will be. So just to detail a little bit on what that submission is, again, I'm just copying from what was sent in the link there. So we've added in a recommendation for defining a community growing space, which would be allotments and community gardens, so that basically it'd be there in law as something that local authorities would be needed to provide. We'll be asking that section about reserving land for local community growing, and also putting in information about that they have to record demand. And that's quite important because there was a 65-year gap where there's no official record for how many allotments and community gardens there are in Ireland. And if you don't have data, it's hard to actually get that policy change, because you need to have a benchmark to work from. And also having details such as accessing land in a timely and also an affordable manner. My fear, if a severe recession happens in years to come, is that, for example, the prices of allotments could shoot up, and that's not going to be a very accessible way for people to grow their own fruit and vegetables then. We've added in information such as adding ministerial approval if land is disposed of. So if allotments and community gardens are removed, that you need to get a government minister to approve that before it goes anywhere. Again, that's copying what is in place in Scotland. As Miriam is saying, there's a lot of good things that are there. We've added in the role of the government ministers to make regulations on community growing spaces, and what that would mean with that, they'd be able to dictate that waiting lists are required, that plots should be affordable, and a maximum amount of time that local authorities must provide land for communities for this purpose. At the moment, there's no actual role for the minister, and that's what we're trying to kind of encourage. And we're also putting in place, we recommended to put in place for local authorities to prepare local food growing strategies. And that could be for allotments, that could be for community gardens, that could be for community supported agriculture, farmers markets, urban orchards, but just to say, this is what's currently in place, this is what we should be encouraging, and just having that local strategy put in place. Again, we think that that's in line with best practices throughout Europe, and we think that would actually encourage the number of allotments and community gardens and afford additional protection. That wording is in the details of the link. As I've said, it's similar to Scotland and Wales, but we need to keep that pressure on, because we still don't know what's going to be in that bill. So anyone listening to this, we would encourage you, get in contact with your local representative, from councillor to senator to TD, and just highlight that we need to make these changes. We need to actually have it in law, because what we've shown is that if we didn't have our eye on the ball, we would be in a very bad state potentially in a couple of months' time. And that again also shows why we need to work together, and why groups like Community Gardens Ireland and Social Farms and Gardens Northern Ireland are so important, because otherwise these changes might have gone through. So please contact your local representative. If you have anyone coming to your garden in the next while, make a mention for how, for example, we need to recognise community gardens in law, and how we've made a submission on this. And again, if you want any questions on this or any information on this, feel free to get in contact with this. You should have our email address, but it's info@cgireland.org if you have any questions or any details you want on this. But that's me. As I said, I don't have any slides or anything to highlight, but there's been a lot going on over the last number of months, and there still will be over the next while, because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So anyway, that's an update on planning and law. Hope I haven't bored anyone with the discussions on the law on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon.
Dónal, we've allowed a few minutes for questions, if anybody has any, before we go into the breakout rooms.
Some comments there. Could a draft letter be sent to everyone to forward to our local councillors? Yeah, sure. I'll add that to my list of things to do. Any other questions?
Not for you, Dónal, but I have a wee question for the man from Strabane, to ask him what time do they open at? No, of the certain openers. Jarlath, sorry.
We open up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Everyone has a key, so it's actually up to them when they want to open. It's open access.
It's you want to pick your brains, Charlotte. So if you can put details maybe up in the chat, I'll get in touch with you.
My details up there, I put them up there, so that.
Oh, okay, good man. Thank
Right,
you.
right, thank you. That up.
Can I just ask a stupid
Go for it.
question? Has anybody, I don't know how these community gardens originally get started, but what about guerrilla gardening, where you just take over a space and you start doing it, and the fuss that you make that might result, either people will use it and it'll be good and it'll just be, it's happened, or there'll be a fuss about it so you can get publicity. Just wonder if that's a good way of making publicity.
I think it has happened in lots of gardens, and Taplin's Fields was a good example, because that derelict site was guerrilla gardened by locals. So when they came to put a park in, there was a group ready to ensure that part of the park was a community garden. But I think, yeah, I think there's lots of different, I think somebody is in the chat here from Edible Bray. I think they've been involved in doing lots of spontaneous planting around the Bray area. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think there's lots of examples of it around the place.
There's a whole aspect of meanwhile gardens as well, and that'll be kind of temporary locations that are used. And one of the things that we were exploring before was, for example, if you hear a lot about houses that might cost too much to renovate, but the gardens might be absolutely fine. Could we actually just, give the garden out to a community group to use instead? So I think that there's lots of opportunities there where people can think outside the box and come up with ways for people to be able to garden locally.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the humble community garden hits a whole complex licensing, leasing and community asset transfer when they identify land. So that initial enthusiasm can be dissipated. And so if you're not getting anywhere, you might as well guerrilla garden and get it started and see where you get to. But it is great to work with the local council and see, or the public landowner, and see if the land can be accessed formally. And maybe it's a temporary lease to begin with, but that develops into, you heard some of the presentations, a 25-year lease, like that's to die for. Fantastic, if you can achieve that. And then people feel secure, and all the effort that you're putting into won't be wasted, because although a meanwhile garden can be just that, it does take a while to get your composting going and your growing going. And if you're planting trees, if you're only going to be there 5 years, they all have to be movable. So there's lots of things to think about with the guerrilla gardening, and sometimes it really suits, and sometimes you should persevere a bit with the local landowner.
We're going to take the discussions into the breakout groups now.
Yeah.
Miriam's going to talk to us about that, so that will be an opportunity for more people to pitch in.
Just before we go, is there any way of adding a poll now, Miriam?
No, is it okay if we do the poll after?
Sure, no problem. Yep, no problem.
Thanks. I'm like at the very stretched limit of my technological capacity. So yeah, so we're gonna do our breakout rooms now, and so basically there won't be a facilitator in the breakout room with you. So just if everybody could just make sure that everybody gets to introduce themselves, say what garden they're from, and get a chance to talk. And basically there'll be 20 minutes and you can talk about whatever you like. So you can talk about the things that have come up during the presentations, if you want to talk about the policy and land stuff, if you want to talk about what Social Farms and Gardens and Community Gardens Ireland could be doing more to help with what you're doing, then that's also fine. And then the idea is that we'll come back together again, and you can write whatever you were talking about in the chat, and then we'll be able to gather all that information and put that into some kind of report. So does that sound okay? Yeah. And I have set up the room, so there's just sort of 5 or 6 people, so hopefully everybody will get a chance to say something, and hopefully there's a mix of people from north and south together. So okay, I'll see you in 20-25 minutes.
Hi, sorry, just one question.
Sorry, Kieran. There you go. So I think the co-host didn't get assigned a room, but you can maybe choose a room if you like.
Okay.
Okay, grand.
Sorry, Kieran.
It's all good. I'll just hop into one.
Room 12 is looking. Room 12 is looking fun. There's only 2 in that one.
Grand. I'll go to room 12 then.
Very good.
And there's a few people here that are maybe listening in but aren't joining, so there could be a few other, if any of the resties want to look and see what rooms it's in.
So Miriam, just confirming we should bring them back at 12:30 because Kieran and Jim will be waiting in Rediscovery to pop in. Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll give them the 20 minutes, I think, because I think we'd agreed that. And we'll just, I think that was the minimum.
Aye.
Yeah.
So that'll be what, it's 33.
Yeah.
12:33. Aye.
Gemma, have you got a room or do you know? Let me see.
And how do, I see the breakout rooms here. I'll pop in.
Excuse me, I can only see room 10. How do I get into another room?
Do you not want to go into room 10?
Well, why do you not have a choice?
No, you do, but I can, if you like, I can find you another room. Hang on, there's somebody in there you don't want to see.
Room 10 looks good.
I put you in room 12. How's that?
Okay, same thing. Okay, join.
So which room will I go into? Which is the thinnest?
10 now.
Ellie's in that room already from us. Like room 8 looks good, Maeve.
Okay, I'll go into room 8.
Will I hop into room 9? No.
Room 9's already quite full, I think.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Room 6.
6.
Yeah. Only 3 in that.
Going now. Thanks.
Cheers.
Do
you want to join in, Connor, or?
1 second. I will join a room here.
I don't know if you were there when me and Maeve were talking about it, but we were just saying that people talk about whatever they want, so I don't think there's any need to mind them too much.
Oh no, I don't think so. I think it's
Oh, I should pause recording. Hang on.
And we're back.
So I hope you had good conversations there. And then the idea is, if you would, if there's anything that really interesting that came up in your conversation, or any points that you want to raise, or anything you just want to get off your chest, if you put it in the chat, and then that means that we'll be able to go through it later and just pick out what it was that people were talking about and thinking about. Does that sound okay?
I'm going to be moving the slides for Kieran, so if somebody in my room could put a summary in the chat. We actually didn't assign somebody to do it.
Yeah, so you can do a report on behalf of your group, or just even your own thoughts, whichever you prefer. Ellie, are you introducing Santry there?
I can introduce Santry if Ellie is not ready. Have we got Kieran in the house?
Yeah, I'm here, Maeve.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to, I'll just very briefly say that when we had our last gathering, North and South, we met in Carlow, and people from the North stayed down an extra day, and we went to visit Santry, and people were so impressed with the amazing community garden that Santry is, that we thought we'd invite them to be our kind of keynote speaker, because I think we've got a lot to learn from you. And some of our members are particularly interested in hearing about the Heritage Orchard. So I'm going to share my screen and start your slides, Kieran, if you want to start talking, okay?
Now, hello everyone. My name is Kieran Keneally, and I'm a member in Santry Community Garden. I'm only there about 5 years, so I'm not one of the founder members, but I have Jim McManus with me, who is a fount of knowledge. I couldn't pretend to know a quarter of what Jim knows in terms of the horticulture and the trees. But I'll give you a background to Santry Community Garden. Back in through the centuries, one of the biggest stately homes in North County Dublin was a property called Santry Domain. And there was a family there called the Domville family. And it had quite a large tract of land. It would have been on a par with Malahide Castle, Ardgillan Castle, Holt Castle. And indeed, there was some of the intermarriage between them. One of the sons married a lady, Margaret, from the Gainsborough St. Lawrence family in Holt Castle. So the house was destroyed and demolished in 59, because it was in a poor state of repair. But luckily, the wall gardens were left fairly well intact, although neglected for a long time. But unfortunately, around 2000, the late 90s, 2000s, a local developer thought that they could build apartments there. They had title to the land and they started knocking some of the walls. But a group of concerned local activists basically got an injunction and prevented that from happening. The walls were rebuilt and the gardens were left vacant for about 10 years. So around 2010, a group of locals asked the council, could they start a community garden within the walls, and just a small section of it. And a few of them joked they were given 18 months to fail, but after 18 months, the council were very impressed with what they were doing. And they decided to allow the 3 interconnecting wall gardens, which basically amount to, it's 2.82 acres to be exact, to be developed into a community garden. And Fingal, I'd have to say, are an amazing local authority to have. They're very progressive. They really get biodiversity, pollination, sustainability, and again, in terms of a community garden, the whole thing about community involvement and inclusion. So with their help, the gardens were laid out, and over the years, the groups that were involved, the committees, through local funding, through grants from the likes of the Dublin Airport Authority and Bus Éireann. We built polytunnels, we put in a solar power system, so we have 5 solar panels. We're not connected to the grid, to either the electricity grid or the water grid, so we have solar panels that we collect the electricity, we convert that into AC to run our 220 volts sockets for our sheds and our lighting. We have a pump that pumps water from our own well, and we can pump that all around the garden using our solar energy. And lately we've converted some of our machinery like lawnmowers, trimmers, leaf blowers, drills to cordless battery operated ones, and we charge batteries from the solar power, so completely self-sufficient off-grid, and I suppose we're very, very proud of that. Our structure is we're member driven. We have an elected committee at our AGM every year, but that's really just for the high level things like finance, funding, membership, insurance, etc. It's really the members on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis who make the decisions and who decide what to grow, put in all the work. And our principle is that those who share the work share in the produce. Yes, we do have gluts every now and again. You come in April, we'll have any amount of rhubarb. In the summer, we'll have any amount of apples. We have about 400 fruit trees between apricot, pears, plums, apples, green gages, golden gages, cherries. We've got all of our red soft fruit. We've got vines. So we have a lot of extra fruit. We use some of these as opportunities to network as well. So there's a local charity, Child Vision, who have a stables that they use for therapy for blind and visually challenged children. They have to get rid of the manure. We take the manure from them, and then we'll give them windfall apples in the summer for the horses. So it's a win-win all round. We also link in with local tree surgeons where we can guarantee that the trees they're cutting are not diseased, and we get a lot of free wood chip from them. Likewise, we get a lot of leaves from the local landscapers who collect them. We make our own compost, our own leaf mold. We do all our comfrey fertilizers, nettle fertilizers, and we also make some, I suppose, we won't call them pesticides, or maybe garlic sprays and equisetum sprays and that to deter insects, but in a totally organic way. Inclusion is a very big part of what we do. We have a local hotel that's at the moment being used for the asylum seekers who are coming in, and we have, I think at the last count, members from over 18 different countries. Some of these people are coming from just basically a lot of horrific situations, and it's wonderful to see the smiles on their faces and just the bit of headspace that it gives them to come over and work with us and chat with us. The sharing of stories and culture and traditions and recipes, their eyes light up when they see some of the vegetables. Oh, we have that in our country, and but they use it in a completely different way to we do. So those sessions are brilliant. We have barbecues throughout the year. We also have, I suppose, special needs people who are working with the local St. Michael's House. They come along with their carers and their key workers. Again, it allows them to get close to the earth. They're learning and socializing in an environment they normally wouldn't get the chance to do. And we also have, the last couple of years, we've got students coming in from horticultural colleges doing their day release and their block release of two or 3 weeks in a row. And the feedback that they're giving us is amazing. They're saying that, you know, they could go to the Botanic Gardens, but they would be stuck doing the same thing week, you know, day after day, week after week. Where they come into us, they get the full range right across the vegetable garden. They learn grafting and pruning in the fruit garden. And then we have the ponds. We have 280 meters of herbaceous borders. So they get a experience across the whole gamut there. We have 2 ponds we're very proud of. One is the formal pond in the main garden, which it was part of the original gardens. So we have planting around that. We do get ducks in it and frogs, but in the back garden we have what we call our wildlife area and a wildlife pond. We've recently kind of tweaked it. You know, it's a light touch because we want as much diversity of wildlife as possible. But what we have done is we've provided little shelves and nooks and crannies. We put in pipes so that the invertebrates, you know, the tadpoles and frogs and that, it can take shelter if we have a grey heron coming in. We don't want to kind of deter nature, but we just want to give everything the best chance we can. We have a bug hotel there, a traditional one, but you know, that's really only as a talking point. The kids come in, oh daddy, look at a bug hotel, and we'll sort of say, well, what do you think is in there? And you know, they'll rattle off the insects and that, and we say no, but look over in the corner, we'll have a log pile that's rotting and doesn't look very attractive, but that's a habitat to the bugs will they'll go there. They'll feed on the decaying wood and on the fungus, and then they'll lay their larvae, and the eggs and the larvae will develop. And it's great to see the kids sort of getting a completely new perspective on it. So I suppose the other big thing we have is we've got the green flag recently, and a lot of people talk about that we got top 10 in the world in green flag spaces. Very, very proud of that, but I suppose that's a bit of fun. That's about how, you know, how many people, members, family, friends you can rally to get out and vote for you. But in getting those people to vote, it gave us a lot of publicity, and you know, that's great. And we've seen so many people from Dublin, from around Ireland, and also from abroad, emailing us and saying, we've seen your garden online and can we come and visit you. So, you know, we've restricted opening hours, but we're trying to do that more and more. Now, I'm not going to bore you anymore because you want to hear more about the Heritage Orchard. So I'm going to hand over to Jim here, who's will tell you all about that.
Yeah, we're all set, are we?
Yeah.
The garden started in 2010. 2011, on the east section, there were standard apple trees and fruit trees planted. And in 2013, a chance meeting with at a compost making session, we met a man called David Howell, and he introduced us to the Irish Heritage Collection. We weren't aware of it. He got the sign wood from University College Dublin, and we got the rootstock and we started planting. And in 2015, we had our first set of trees. The first planting was done in, the first sign wood, or the first grafting was done in February 2013. We planted one Sunday 89 plants. I think we got about 60 of them struck, and we planted 42 more the following week, and about roughly the same. The rate we were getting was about 70%, but that means everyone and anyone was doing grafts. You came in, you never seen a bit of sign wood, you never seen a Stanley knife, and we were doing reasonable at 70%. But you can get it up to about 90% if you tie the graft and make the joint, what would I say, nice, smoother. You know, the two of them, the graft and the root stock has wood. On the outside is bark, but inside a very thin layer is the cambium layer. That's where the sap travels up and down. And you have to get that cambium layer to unite from the rootstock with the sign wood. That the two of them must be flush. They must kiss so that the sap will move easily across. Not 100%, but you need to get it as close as possible, and you need good tying. And you also can use grafting wax. Then we continued on the following year, and we built up the collection. We didn't have the full collection. We now have the full collection of 68. These are, there's a book that was produced in 2014. Before, after we weren't aware of this book. It was produced by Teagasc in conjunction with Heather McNeese from the Armagh Orchards Trust, Seed Savers in Scariff and Clare, and there's a few more people involved, but the man that edited was Michael Hennerty. He was Professor of Horticulture in University College Dublin, but his speciality was fruit trees or fruits. He had a PhD in fruits from Cornell University in America. He was 4 years there, and he wrote about 50 papers, and let's say he was the man who decided whether they're Irish trees and what they are. They were all DNA tested with data banks in Europe, and there was no trace in any other data bank that matched these trees. These trees would have been grown for maybe 200 years in Ireland, 100 years, 200 years. The parents would have died off, and what was left was the offspring. So they couldn't trace back to where they came from. And the collection is 68. There's about 20 of them are cookers, and about 10 of them are dual purpose. They come on as cookers, and then they become dessert apples. Most of them are actually large to very large. One of them there is actually as big as a melon. It's a kilo weight, or it's half a kilo, and it comes from Limerick. Most apples that you buy in the shop you get them in a kilo pack, and you get about 5 or 6. They're under 200 grams. These things, some of these things would be 300 grams, 400 grams.
Jim, sorry to interrupt. I'm just conscious of the time, and we want to leave some time for questions at the end. So could you wrap up in a minute or two?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I'll take questions now if you want.
No, sure, finish up there and then we'll open it up.
All I would say is that the garden is open and it's easy to access. It's near the M50 motorway. It's open 4 days a week, and you can see the full collection down in Scariff and Clare, which is a long distance away. It depends on what part of the country you are. Dublin is very convenient. You can come in any day, and there's a number of people there will show you around. And a good time to come is during the summer or the autumn, where you can actually see them with the fruits on them and taste them, because we do a bit of tasting. And I'll just say one thing. If you're looking to get an espalier, get a rootstock that's able to take that type of tree, and it's a 106 you go for. You don't go for an M9, M27, or an M26. You go for a 106, and you must also get it. It must be spur bearing. That means the fruit will grow along the spur, not tip bearing. But a lot of people make that mistake when they get the wrong rootstock, and they get them tip bearing or partial tip, partial spur. You must get it spur bearing, because the fruits will grow on the spur, because it has outstretched branches. Right, by the way, with questions.
And Kieran, do you just want to mention about the green flag presentation on the 23rd?
Oh yes, the guys, that's Dublin community growers.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's the AGM on the 23rd, and they've asked me to do a presentation on the Green Flag Community Award. So I'll do that. I'll just talk maybe about 10 minutes on I suppose our experience, but it's really what the criteria are and how to go about it, about getting a green flag. There's no platinum, gold, silver, bronze categories. Every category, whether it's a pocket garden of a third of an acre to a wall garden of 3 acres like ours, is in the same category. As I say, the Palace of Versailles in Paris has a green flag, and so does your local park. So we'll go through that, and it's interesting, but fairly simple as well. But it's most of what you guys are doing in terms of horticultural practice, accessibility, community development, sustainability, pollinator friendly stuff. That all goes towards the marking of it, but it's just to do it in a structured way, and I'll talk about that at the AGM on the 23rd.
Okay, Miriam, can you stop my screen share because my cursor has frozen? There.
So yeah, we had a couple of minutes, did we, for questions?
Just one quick one for Kieran there. Do you sell on young trees that you're propagating on different rootstocks, and are those available?
I'll let Jim talk about that. Yeah.
We don't. If we have some available, we sell them, but we don't actually target sales.
Yeah.
But what you can get is, if you're looking for sign wood, before we prune them, if you want a particular variety, we can hold on to the sign wood for you, because it's been dumped anyway.
Yeah.
So if you want to do rootstock, you can do your own rootstock. If you get say an M9 rootstock, you put it in the ground in the springtime. When it's let it grow until it's about 2 foot high. Cut it back to ground level, and then it will send out suckers, and side shoots, and that will be your new rootstock. In the autumn, the plant will get stressed, but you can also scrape it with a penknife down lower below the soil, and this will cause suckers to come out, and they will be the rootstock. You get 9 or 10 of them. So if you have your own, it's called mound layering or stooling. That's what it's called, and that's how they get rootstock. You can buy it from Holland, from England, or Seed Savers in Clare buy it from Germany. It's probably certified okay, but you can get it yourself. We have a bit of rootstock. It's easy enough to do, but it takes time to wait for it. Now there are some of those Irish heritage. There's about 10 of them, and they are they will grow from cuttings. They put out aerial roots or burnouts, and there's about 9 or 10 of them that you do it in the dormant season. Midwinter, put them into sand, and they will grow, but they won't grow to be an M9. They'll just grow big, tall tree. But they used to be given as a wedding present years and years ago. People, a newly married couple, they got a piece of signboard as a wedding present. They stuck it in the garden and they had an apple tree.
Connor, if you want to follow that up, just give us a call and we'd be happy to facilitate you with any signboard that you want. And that goes for anyone as well that's listening in. We're happy to share.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's really good and great information, John. Thank you.
Can I just say one other thing I forgot to mention very quickly? We have used our orchard and we've about 400 fruit trees in total, and we've used that as an income stream over the years, because what we do is we put a stake in. All of the trees need a stake because they're miniature rootstock. We use that stake to have the name of the tree variety on it, but we also we allow people to sponsor them for €50 per tree in memoriam of somebody who's passed. Sometimes grandparents come in and want a tree for their first grandchild that's born and then bring them along in a few years' time to show them. But with 400 fruit trees over the last 10 years, that's provided an income of about 20,000. So it's something that maybe other community gardens with trees could think about as an income stream.
Fabulous.
Miriam, were you going to do the poll?
Yes. Dónal, do you want to? Will I just launch it, or does anybody want to say anything about it? So just got a poll for you.
Dónal might say a word.
Yeah. If you want, so one thing we're looking to do from everyone here is to try to get a sense of. Oh, here it is. Of if you support what we're doing, because it's nice, I suppose, to get a mandate or to get feedback from everyone. But what we're trying to do is to have a call for revised legislation. So local authorities must provide allotments in community garden where demand is present. So we'd love to get your feedback if you agree with what we're doing, because it's kind of important to kind of get everyone to know what we're doing and agree with us, I suppose. So that's what the poll is. It's only going to be open for a short amount of time, but hopefully you agree with us.
While that poll is running, hi, I'm Molly down in Cork.
Hi, Molly.
I had an idea. We were talking about governance in our breakout room, and I know that there's the cooperative legislation is being revised. You can start co-op with 3 people instead of 7. So that could be, I don't know much more yet. It'll probably take about a year to affect. Could be an interesting governance structure looking forward for community groups that want to minimize risk.
Well, if you have information, Molly, sure, forward it on to us, and sure we can chat. Thank you. The poll seems pretty good. I haven't even voted on this yet, so I should probably. Am I allowed to vote? I don't know.
Anyway, co-hosts haven't been.
Oh, we're barred. Okay, fine. At the moment, we're at 100% for yes, which is good. I was afraid people might disagree, but no. Okay, that's kind of what we wanted. So we're at 1 o'clock now, so people can still vote. But Connor, do you want to lead us in, or does anyone have any other questions before we do?
Yeah, Dónal, I have one question there. Just governance came up there, and like I'm involved with the Irish Men's Shed Association, and I'm on the G&C subcommittee. So governance is an area that comes up regularly, and obviously conflict within groups. Does CGI have, I suppose, a suite of information available to members just in relation to that? Because conflict does happen, and it does create problems, especially in early days of development of projects. Has anyone looked at that, or is it an area that's...
It's come up at some of our meetings, and I think what we've talked about is that the wheel, I think, have some advice on conflicts and community groups and how best to structure them. So I don't think we have anything specifically ourselves, but I would recommend having a look on the wheel, or if someone has a link to something directly, to pop in the chat.
Well, it's a good thing. It's something that we should add to our resource folder on the website. Some gardens have engaged in restorative practice, which has been quite widely used now in community groups as a way of resolving conflict. So I'll put something in the resource folder over the next few weeks on that.
I'll just mention, actually, just jump in a second. I've been trying to encourage our local development partnership to put together a course for conflict management for all community groups, actually, because it's not just community garden specific, but I know Joanne's here from the development partnership in Donegal, but it could either be for community groups, but also for people who are working with groups. There's almost a need for two types of conflict education there. So I'd say maybe try and get onto your development partnerships and try and build something as well.
Yeah. See, just on that, the Northeast Inner City in Dublin, which got kind of some central government funding, they have provided free training in restorative practice for local community groups. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Okay, great stuff. Well, look, we're at 2 minutes past 1 now, and it's been a fabulous attendance and a really wonderful gathering. North, south, east, west. We've had opinions coming on, and they had some fantastic information. I think I don't think anybody's here will feel it wasted their morning, but we just invite anybody who feels so inspired that they want to take it on all wee level to come along to the Community Gardens Ireland AGM, which will be starting as soon as we finish this meeting, because we're a voluntary committee, and we take on the work of advancing the promotion of community gardens across the country, and you do need volunteers to do that. We've had some great people come on board over the last couple of years, and we're sure there's some more out there in the meeting today. So if you'd like to sign your life away or just hear what it's all about, please join us, and we'll just run through a bit of the business. It'll not take too long, and then if you are interested in being in the committee, we will invite you to our next committee meeting, at which point officers and people like that will be appointed. So it's just a chance for you to see how we operate too. So that's my wee piece.
And Connaught, could I just add that the Community Foundation All Ireland Fund supported Community Gardens Ireland and ourselves, Social Farms and Gardens, to do our All Ireland work. And we got so much from it, building relationships, but also looking at policy. So those two sides to it were the impact. So we have applied, and Connaught took a lead in that, into the Shared Island Fund to continue that work. And so that if any of you, I think a lot of us are inspired this morning, do want to visit a garden north or south, we would try to facilitate that, if not in the previous program, in the future one or one of our programs, because we learn so much from each other, and we know we as committees and staff have benefited so much from the relationship north-south. So thank you all for coming this morning. It was lovely to see you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and anyone else, as Connaught said, interested in staying on, please stay on. And thanks to everyone, thanks to Patricia, thanks to Miriam, thanks to Connaught for all your help on the setting up of this on the Social Farms and Gardens point of view. I think it's been a great event, and listen, thank you all.
Right.
Thanks,
have a good AGM. Bye.
Thanks Miriam for holding the fort there.
Bye.